Hello, product people. Welcome to the Product for Product podcast, hosted by Matt Green, data advocate and product manager, and Moshe product leader and author. Our goal is to serve the product community by helping you find products that can help make your work in product management easier. Thanks for joining us on another episode of the Product for Product podcast.
Welcome back. Today we're wrapping up the series on no-code platforms. We were happy to speak with various professionals about how they're using no-code platforms to build products. We cover the tools Bubble, Softr, Adalo, and Glide, but there are many more. So let's go ahead and hop in. How you doing, Moshe?
I'm good. How are you, Matt?
Doing great.
Excellent. We're nearing our 50th episode, so this is
time
really
flies.
exciting. Our jubilee.
It's awesome. Time flies when you're having fun.
Absolutely. We did have fun with the no-code platform series, didn't we?
Yeah, the no-code platform's been great. We've had some really good conversations. I really enjoyed having the guest on, hearing about how they're using it. Especially, some of the people we've had on, they're not necessarily product managers. We've had people running firms. We've had people teaching product managers. We've had possibly aspiring product managers. And I think we've had a very eclectic group of people, and I think that's pretty cool.
From all over the world, actually.
Yeah, from all over the world, yeah. And Yusukes was our first Japanese
yes.
So that was great.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because no-code, I think until still, it's not really targeted at product managers. It's more targeted at people that don't code. Yep. And people that, and most product managers, if not all product managers, don't code. Even if a product manager had software engineering background in their day-to-day job as a product manager, they're not the engineer, right? Right. But it's really geared to people to democratize, building software. Right. And like anyone in the enterprise that can build utilities or products for their own work, or founders that are trying to get products out quickly and relatively cheaply. But we found that it's actually a very useful type of product for product managers for different reasons that we mentioned throughout the series. So let's maybe just recap on that. So the first thing is creating something quickly. We know that we want to create mockups, prototypes. We always go through wireframings and ideas and showing it to users and doing validation and all of that stuff with the help of designers. So we don't always do it on our own, of course. But the power that we see with no-code products is that you can do it as something that already works. And you can even release it as an MVP, right, as an initial, product, and get feedback from user quickly. So there is a value there to validate ideas, validate your thinking, create something that will already might create a value to users, and start testing that. Yep. And with what we heard also from our guests, sometimes or many times these platforms have limitations about what you can do in them, which kind of force you to think very strictly about what is it that you can do and you cannot do, and what value you can create with those products to your users. So instead of running with like crazy ideas that take a lot of time to develop, you might be able to nail it down to something much more concise. Yep. And then get value by doing that.
Yeah, that's a good point. When you're mentioning that stuff, I'm thinking about the stuff Yusukes had spoken about, when his visit to New York City, he put together an application to help identify restrooms for him. And, he actually had, I think it was 100 something downloads or something within a couple of days or something like that. And so he built something for himself, and other people were excited by it, but he got it out there. I don't know the time frame, how fast he was able to release it, but he got it out there. People were using it. And I thought that was like a really cool thing where, if he had to start from scratch and try to like code it himself and deploy it himself, I mean, that's just, he may not have ever done it.
Yeah, and just the number of people that downloaded in that short amount of time gave him already immediate feedback in a very short time that some people are interested in that there is value for some people, and also I'm not sure if he had access to those specific individuals, but even if he wants to build a real business out of that or a real product out of that, whether it is for finding bathrooms or for anything else.
Yeah.
If you have this amount of people up front, you can already tap into that resource and start talking with them, start interacting with them, and see what is it really that they find value in, what they didn't find value in.
Right.
And so gaining, we know how hard it is sometimes, especially when we start something new, to gain the initial people that will be interested in that. So that's valuable on its own.
Yep.
So that was one thing that we talked about. The other thing was about aspiring product managers. So people that want to get into product management, and they go through lots of different courses to learn what product management is, but then when they try to find jobs, it's people want to see experience. They want to see, what have you done? What did you try to build? What did you fail? Where did you pivot? How did you learn from trying different things? And were you successful? Etc. So just by trying out, different ideas, and I'm always telling people, you don't have to think about an idea that no one thought about before.
Yeah.
Take something that someone already built, that's fine. Or take something that like the example you gave from Yusukes, that it's your own personal
problem you're trying to solve.
Problem or peeve pain that you have, and try to see, can you build something for that? Even if you're not going to monetize that, it doesn't really matter. You are going to learn a lot by trying it out, and the level of entry here is very low, because you can get these platforms for free in their basic tier, where you have many of them, what they have is like a threshold of number of transactions or number of database entries that you can have, or a number of users or something like that. So you can still do that just for your learning. And then you will see that the problem is not always specifically how to build it. It's more about how to validate, how to get the users, how to understand the real problem, and then see if you creating a value if you're solving that problem. And that's where the magic of product management is.
Yeah, I think some of that stuff came up with talking to Henry with his prod MBA stuff, where they're teaching aspiring PMs to build product, but not doing it with just like teaching, but actually doing. And I think we may have spoken about the things like Airbnb and stuff like that. I think even though like something like Airbnb exists, trying to understand how they built that product and how they built that solution and solved the problem that the market has, I still think there's an extreme amount of value in that. And you can't build exactly what they did, but if you're able to identify how they may have done it and how they're doing it, and maybe there's some snippet in there how they possibly could do it better, or maybe there's another industry that could be disrupted in a similar fashion. You don't have to, like you're saying, you don't have to have some one-off idea of like, hey, I'm the only person that's ever thought this, because there's probably somebody out there who probably already has, but you're thinking about how I can do it better. And so I think that right there sharpens you as an aspiring PM, or even a PM in general. So I think these tools can allow you to do that, because they allow you to get those ideas out, on paper or whatnot. So you're not just thinking about them, you're actually doing them.
Yeah, absolutely. So these are really, I think the two main values that we've seen for product managers. There is, of course, many other things that we touched on the shows. Like we touched on, is it scalable? Can you rebuild real products from that will scale for
many people? Yeah,
many people or many years, etc. personally, and that's again our personal opinion, based on what we've seen and based on what we're told by our guests. So if there are other opinions out there, or people can show us, examples, we will love to see. Personally, we feel that there is some more maturity to go for these products to be more scalable. There are definitely use cases where they can be, great products for, like internal processes or for websites or for things like that. But I don't know if I could build a SaaS product based on that.
Based on one of these.
Right.
Yeah. And I'm thinking of the conversation with Jesus about the coin collector. The coin collector had a problem, and, it was a solution that Jesus and his team built on Glide. Maybe that never scales. I mean, maybe that's a niche problem that this user, this client had, but that doesn't diminish the value of that thing, because that person has a problem,
of course,
nothing else in the market was solving it for them. They didn't have a way of solving it.
Right.
So I guess that's a good point. So I guess when it comes down to strategy, what do you want to do with these tools? Are you looking to prototype? Are you looking to scale something? Are you internal or external facing? There's so many different variables that go into your decision about what you want to use.
And it's a good example because sometimes the market could be very, very small. So that's where we also have part of our product management skills, is to understand the market and find a more product fit for our product. And if the market is very, very small, very niche, niche markets could also be very big. The world is big with globalization, everything these days. But it's also about reach out and vision and goals for that specific product. So maybe that it was a specific problem he wanted to solve for his club or for his niche members that will never grow beyond 1,000 or 10,000 people. But when you talk about millions, then it might not. And then another thing that we talked about was I think that also came up with Henry, was related to how many times you cannot really do everything you're trying to do with one platform. You have to stitch together a few platforms. And as an example, a good example, both Glide and Software, they're using, and Adalo, I think also, they're using databases as externally from their tool. Well, Glide specifically, they have their own internal, but they have also the ability to plug in spreadsheets very easily. Where with the Software, I think it was that you have to use Airtable. So it's that's part of their ecosystem that they're telling you right up front. That's how you have to do it. But sometimes to solve a specific problem that you're trying to solve, it's much more complicated than that, and you can stitch a few non-code platforms or non-code systems together to create the solution you're trying to create. So this could be a bit more complex things to think of and to come up with, technically. But it's possible to do, but it also reduces the scalability of them.
Right, and that's what thinking of Keyshawn's conversation about Bubble, where he did have a more robust. He needed Bubble, I guess, to build a more robust application. And I think he was using like AWS or something like that for storage, for data storage, I think, from what I recall. So he was going off and doing much more robust database management and stuff like that. So where I don't think a Glide or anything like that would have fit his need. Bubble was something that, even though Bubble, from the conversations we had, Bubble's more mature, but it comes with a little more complexity. But for his use case, that's what he needed.
Right.
And so that's another consideration when you're building these things. What do you need? What are you going to have to stitch together in order to create your solution?
Yeah. And we, while we were doing this series, we also, tried out some of those products. So we built, when we looked into Glide with Jesus, we built an application, very simple application for our podcast. If you didn't see it yet, then we we can share the link for sure. And it's a very simple application. And luckily, we already had an Excel spreadsheet or a Google sheet, sorry, that included all the information that we needed over there. We just needed to add some links to the images because we wanted to show also the image of each one of the episode. And it was very, very simple to build this application because Glide makes it really simple when you have that information laid out properly in a spreadsheet. After that, I was looking, we found a sample application for podcast on Adalo. And we looked into, okay, so let's see. The nice thing over there was that they have also a built-in audio player, so we could actually play the episodes from within the application rather than redirect the user to externally like we did with Glide. But when we looked into it, the structure to put all the information together would have been taking us much longer to do because it wasn't as simple, straightforward, the spreadsheet that we had for Glide. So it was interesting to actually kind of see and compare the two. And sometimes, even if you pick up one of those applications, it doesn't mean you cannot pick another one for another use case or for something else, right?
Yep.
But that makes it like, okay, so now I have to learn another one of those products. And if you already have a license for one because you're a paid user, then and you find that another system gives you does it in a simpler way, now again you have to pay another license for another one.
Yeah,
it's not. I mean, sometimes it's not a big deal, and it might worth it because you might save time on things. You might make things more simpler. So definitely have a look at what are the best use cases for each one of those to solve the specific problem that you are trying to solve.
Right. And each one of those, I think each one of these no-code platforms have very similar features, similar structures in terms of like what they offer, source resources. They all seem to have experts that can help you build your applications.
Yes.
So trying to like figure out which one's best, I guess going in and speaking with Yusukes, he picked Adalo because that's the first one he used. And us building Glide on Glide, that may be the first one we go with.
Yeah, I can tell you that when I looked into Adalo afterwards, although I used Adalo before I like a year ago, I tried to build some application, so I was already familiar with it. But when I saw it after I built that application in Glide, I was like, oh, this looks so much more complex. And and it is a simple system, Adalo. It's not complicated. And it's actually very nice where you can see all the layout of the different pages that you have, and you see like a flow between them. So it's actually pretty nice, where you actually don't have that in Glide. But again, it's the level of entry here is very low.
Right.
It's very simple to, well, I think it's relative simple to learn these systems. I mean, I'm a bit biased because I have a background in engineering. So I was a software developer for 20 years. And to me, a database makes sense. Tables make sense. Query and filtering from tables make sense. Fields on a page make sense, and the different types of fields and the data and data structure, and that all makes sense. So maybe for me, because it's like in my background and my DNA almost, it makes sense to look for, okay, so where do I store the data, and how do I filter on the data, and how do I get the data to put on the screen, and how do I choose different type of fields? Is it a text field or a data field or a number field, or is it date calendar picker or whatever it is, right? I don't know if people that don't have that experience are if it is that obvious to them. That's what I don't know. But from speaking with Yusukes, for example, he doesn't have that background, and he admitted that he tried to develop, and he decided it was too complicated for him, and he still was able to pick these things up fairly fast. So I think that there is it's just it's showing that it is democratizing software development.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a great point about the database and having the data structure. I'm thinking of the conversation with Jesus is where, we were talking about whether you build your application on, whatever they have, whether it be Airtable or whatever, Google Sheet or whatever, or you try to think about something long-term scalability. But he was mentioning, how many users are going to have. I mean, at the end of the day, you could almost have 1 million users one day. Well, try to get 10 users, 50 users, 100 users, and then build your solution. And I think these tools are great because, like you're saying, they do hook up very seamlessly to a sheet or something like that from a database perspective. So someone that doesn't have that experience with databases can get up and running and start solving their problems much more quickly than trying to worry about like, oh, I don't know data architecture. Well, how do you do data modeling? I don't understand that stuff. So that's a great point. I think that's something that's often overlooked because you're thinking about the UI and you're thinking about the experience of your application, but you still have to have the back end. I mean, you still have to understand like how that stuff works in terms of data storage. But when they're making it so easy, that takes that kind of the pressure off.
Yeah.
Because when I went into Bubble a year or two ago, and I have experience in databases and modeling and architecture, but when I went in there, I was like, how do I hook up the database? Like, how do I do all this in here?
Yeah.
And it kind of just drops you into a user interface where you start trying to like build stuff, but not thinking about like where you're storing the data. Like, I don't understand. So
it's true. Yeah. The nice thing about all of them is that they have lots of templates and lots of other products that you can actually start from. So you can clone other existing, products that people built, either they built or just people built, and they, allow other people to use as a baseline for your product. So if you do that, then it will clone the entire thing, which will include the data behind it and stuff like that. But then it's just a matter of finding in this system where is that data exactly. I remember I also tried. I did a prototype in last year in Bubble because I had a business idea for a product and I wanted to validate this. So I built that on Bubble. And in the beginning, I was like, also, where is my data exactly? How do I find it? How do I add new fields to it? How do I query specific information from it and stuff like that? Yeah. So I remember it took me a bit while to figure that out. And also I used the resources that they had. So that was really great.
Yep.
So I was able to look for different examples and stuff like that. And Bubble actually did a neat thing. They had a series, we mentioned that, they had a series of, I think it is videos where they show how they build a clone for many known systems out there. So Airbnb clone and on Bubble and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. But yes, there are all of these technical thing that we, as with background in software, in data, in databases, we kind of know to look for, where the uninitiated, I guess, need to understand where that this is part of the ecosystem and how do they do that exactly. But I think that it's based on what I'm seeing that so many people are using that. I think that it's actually quite
understood
and that people know that.
I think so. I think so. I mean, as data has become more prevalent in everyone's lives, I think people have got a better understanding of it.
Exactly. And maybe maybe this is something we kind of didn't ask and we just thought about it now, but we didn't ask in the episodes. Although some of the people did have more of a technical background, but again, based on seeing how this is growing, it's probably not a big issue.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Now we talked about 4 products. There are many other products. We were hoping to have another one, Thankable, on the show. We actually already have a guest for that, but she wasn't able to make it. So we might have a bonus episode after this one. We'll see how it works out with the.
Yep.
We can cut this out if we ever before.
Yep.
But we'll see how it works out. But there are other platforms for sure. there are more niche platforms. There are platforms that are aiming only for like internal people at an organization. So maybe they know it's not scalable, and they're like, okay, let's just aim to internal, people, getting solutions out of the hand of IT, I guess, and into the hands of the people. Things like that. So there is definitely more of them out there. And also, when you do search on no-code platforms, usually what you will find is not just the platforms we covered, which we try to cover platforms that you can build an application. Mm-hmm. But there are many other platforms that call themselves no-code platforms, like web forms or Zapier. Exactly. Yeah. These are part of the ecosystem for sure. Like Airtable, they're part of the ecosystem, but we don't think that you can build a product on those platforms. You can use them, to integrate, like Zapier, to integrate between many different applications with Airtable to create a very sophisticated, spreadsheets and functionalities on them. And you can use them as your backend database for some of those other platforms. Mm-hmm. But you cannot build like a mobile app with them or a full-blown application that people log into and have different features in there and they do things in there or whatever it is. So that's what was the focus of what we were looking at. Mm-hmm. But for sure, there are many other products out there, and we probably could focus in the future on specific themes like that. So actually, a product like Zapier, so there is definitely more products out there that we will focus on more in the future. And just one other note that I forgot to mention before about how it's an ecosystem that you can stitch together a few products to create a solution. This actually sits very well with an MVP notion, because with MVP, we're trying to build something very quickly that will do something. So the MVP sometimes will be stitched from different things. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it will be just a manual thing that someone has to do in the background that no one knows about, right?
Right.
So in an MVP, we could have a user in the end user enter something in the software, and then they think that something happened in the back, where actually in the back end, it's a person to do something quickly, or maybe we tell them, okay, we'll do it in 2 hours or 24 hours. We will send you something, right?
Yeah.
And it's not really a software that does it, it's a person that does it.
Yeah.
So that's also could be another, we send information to another system or whatever it is. So sometimes when we build MVPs, we are actually thinking about an ecosystem of where the data is going to go between different systems and which system will solve what, and what will be manual, what will be automated. And that's definitely where some of those no-code applications can help.
Yeah, I'm thinking about that infographic that we put together for the episodes we have. But I'm thinking about it from a no-code perspective, because you have the no-code platforms that we're speaking to, where you can build an actual application and deploy it on a native app or whatnot, or you have something like Zapier, or you have other solutions that are in the ecosystem of no-code, and they play a part in your application possibly, but they are on the other realm of the infographic. So. Maybe that's something helpful that might be helpful for listeners to see that kind of visualization at some point. Maybe we think about that at some point, to where if you say no code, what do you exactly mean by no code? Because I think they all go into product, like we're saying. I mean, at the end of the day, you could have a product using integrations from Zapier to build your application, and so it's part of your product. It's just on the back end of things.
Right.
So I think it's a good point to have for listeners.
Perfect. Yeah. We are working on more episodes to come in the future. Some of the one-offs and new themes. We are excited to continue our podcast.
Looking forward to great guests in the future, to have some more great topics. I think this was, again, Thank you to the guests. I think this was great to talk about the no code stuff, and I think it's going to continue to mature. So I'm excited to see where it goes in the future.
Absolutely.
Well, awesome. Thank you so much, Moshe. Thank you, all listeners. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, everyone. Stay tuned for more episodes. And as always, we appreciate your comments, your feedback, and also reviews on the different platforms.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.